Hello fellow Unreal Engine games developers. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this desert dust cloud effect using a 2D image plane to simulate a three-dimensional cloud, and it sticks with you whether you're in the first person or third person character. Let's get straight into it. Last week we created this desert landscape in Unreal Engine 5. If you missed out on that tutorial, the link is in the top right corner. You don't need to do that for today's tutorial though. So we ended up with this desert landscape, and today I'm going to create a desert dust cloud effect. So the nice thing about this is it's done in a 2D image plane, but it creates the illusion of a three-dimensional effect. And I'm going to make sure that it also follows you as a character wherever you are on the map. So whether you're playing in first person or third person, the dust cloud will always be around you. The first thing you might want to do before you create the material for the dust cloud is you might want to play around with your height fog, exponential height fog, to sell the effect. I've been playing around with this a bit, so you could increase the fog density, for example. So maybe I'll put that to 0.3. I've also switched on volumetric fog. Usually that makes a big difference. It sort of interreacts with the atmosphere, and then you can play around with these other things like the opacity. I've taken it all the way down. At 1 you can't see anything in the distance, but I wanted to see the distant dune, so I've made that 0.01, and then the fall off, you can adjust that to add as much or as little fog in the distance as you want. So that's just to add to the effect of dust in the atmosphere before we create the dust cloud. So we're going to create a material to go on our image plane. I'm going to use some nodes from another material that's got a custom noise that we're going to use. So that's the first thing we need to do, is copy those nodes. So bring up your content browser with control space. Make sure you're at the top of the Explorer when you're selecting all, and also in your settings here, make sure that you've got show engine content and show plugin content checked. And then you can search for gen noise and open up this gen noise 01 material. And if you zoom out, you'll see there's a lot of nodes in here. What I want you to do is I want you to zoom in on the section that has text coordinate in the top left, and actually let's go out a bit further, and noise, custom noise in the bottom right. And if you've got all of those on the screen, I want you to drag a box around all of those elements. So from text coordinate down to custom noise, and do Control C to copy them. And once you've done that, you can come out of here. We'll go back into our Explorer, get rid of your filter, go to your top level content folder, and we'll create a new folder here for our material. So do new folder called materials, go into that, and then right click, create new material, and call it m_dust cloud, and then open that up. Okay, so now just click anywhere on the empty screen and do Control V, and then just drag those before the dust cloud attributes at the end. So we've pasted in those nodes. So we're going to be creating a translucent material here. So the first thing we need to do is set that up. Go to your dust cloud node here and change the blend mode to translucent rather. And you've probably got a window here showing you, or an environment here. I want to have a blank background for this. It'll be easy to see the effect as we create it. So go to Window, Preview Scene Settings, and then that'll bring up this window here. Go down to the Environment section and expand it out, and then untick Show Environment and Show Floor, and you should end up with a fairly blank canvas here. make sure your environment color has some color in it. I think this is the default, the gray. Okay, so at the moment we haven't got any material showing here. Also actually switch to a plane as well. Set the preview to a plane. That'll be more similar to what we're actually doing. So what we've done here is we've copied these nodes. We don't need all of them here, so let's delete a few here. We don't need this divide node. We don't need this subtract node or any of these. We don't need this noise node. We don't need this noise type node. Okay. And in fact, we can get rid of this multiply here as well. We don't need two multiplies. Okay, let's explain what we're doing here. We're going to create a noise that looks like a dust cloud, and we're then going to pan that noise in an image plane in order to create the effect of dust clouds passing by the player. And later on we'll add another node here that simulates depth quite effectively. So let's connect this to the base color, and let's also connect it to the opacity. Those are the only two material attributes we'll need, and then we'll have to change some parameters. And now you can see we've got something on our plane. It doesn't look anything like clouds, but that's because we need to change some parameters. So these parameters for the custom noise here, the first one is the noise type, and a gradient noise is good for cloud effects, so we'll leave that. The next one is turbulence. You want to have that at 0. Anything other than 0 looks strange for clouds, so leave that as it is. Next we have the parameters in this noise C parameters. We can get rid of this multiply here, and then we'll put the red noise C parameters into repeat size directly. Okay. And these this vector here is defining the tiling of the noise, the random seed of the noise, the octaves of the noise, and the persistence of the noise. So actually we can name them in here. If you go to the noise C parameters down here where it says channel names, see at the bottom here, you can actually name these. So we could name these tiling, seed, octaves, and last one is persistence. And that's all these were here for, was to remind you what the RGBA channels were, so we can get rid of those now. All right, so let's play around with these parameters and see what we get. Let's start off with the tiling. So if I change the tiling value from 2 to 15, you can see now that it has created a more dense pattern. If I go in close here, it's sort of cloud-like, but it's not really what we expect clouds to look like yet. So let's stay close up and change some other parameters. So octaves, let's put that all up to 7, which I believe is the maximum. And now you can see that it's created a lot of distortion within the noise, and that does now start to look like clouds. So if we animated this would probably look like dust clouds on a plane. Persistence I've played about with, but 0.5 seems the right value. If I do a persistence of 1, you get this very odd effect, like clouds very high up in the air, and 0 is too indistinct. So stick with 0.5 for that, and we now have our basic cloud pattern, albeit static at the moment. So the next thing I want to do is I want to get this pattern moving, and what we can do is we can use a panner node here. So let's delete the text coordinate node here and right click and type panner. By default, I think it takes the texture coordinates, so you don't have to put those in. So let's connect that to our multiply. And what we want to do is we want to change the speed of this panner. So at the moment, you see it's still static. What we want to do is we want to have a parameter that drives the X and Y speed of the panner. So what I'll do is I'll press 4 on the keyboard, and that'll create a vector 4 and then convert to parameter, and I'm going to call this dust cloud. And I want the RNG, well, the RNG values will be my vector 2 for the speed X and speed Y. So if you connect that together, we'll actually name those just like we did down here. Go to the bottom, and where it says RNG channel names, we'll say speed X and speed Y. Okay, so at the moment those are 0 and 0, but if we set it to 0.01, can you see it's starting to move? And let's do 0.05 on the Y. And now what we've got is some movement of that looks like dust or general clouds moving in the environment. So those are parameters we can change. So we've got our first pass at the material we need. Let's go and create an image on in front of our character that we can use. So save this. Might take a few seconds, and once it's saved, go back to your project, and in your world settings find your third person character, browse for them and open them up. So go to the viewport, and what we're going to do is we're going to add an image plane in here with our cloud material to simulate the dust clouds. So add a component. It's an plane, I should say. So you want a plane, and let's call it dust plane, and go to rotation. So select it, do E on the keypad, and then rotate it up 90 degrees. Go back with W to select it, and let's put it just in front of the character for now, and scale it up 4 times. So you see, make sure this scale's locked so it does scales on all axes, and do 4 to scale it up. So what we're doing here is sort of creating like a projector in front of the character. And now we want to add our material to that plane. So with the plane selected, go to the material and select, just type dust cloud material, and there you can see those clouds panning across the viewfinder. If we go into play mode, what you can see here is something that looks very unauthentic. A, it's too small, and B, it's stuck in one place. So you can see, although it's in front of me all the time, it's sort of moving around with me, and that's not the effect I want. I want it bigger, and I want it to be in one place. So what I actually want to do is I want it to be parented to the camera rather than the character. And obviously a bit bigger as well. So let's stop playing, and what we'll do now is we'll take this dust plane and drag it into the follow camera. So you can see now it's the child of the camera, and you can see it's sort of about halfway between at the moment. Move it close to the camera, I would say, so it's almost sort of a fifth the distance between the camera and the character. If I come around here and I sort of zoom in, you imagine I'm sort of here. That's the effect I'm going for. So it's sort of the clouds are around me, and that looks around the right sort of scale as well. So now it should it should stick to the camera. So wherever the camera looks, that should always be a window in front of the camera, almost like a second lens. So compile this and go into play mode, and there you can see that it's a much more authentic effect. It's probably a little bit too dense, but we can adjust things like opacity later on. So let's first of all create a material instance so we can play around with the parameters. We connected the material to it, but really I should create an instance of this so that I can change parameters. So let's come out of here, go back to our materials and select the material and create a material instance and leave it with that name, M Dust Cloud Instance, that's fine. And then go back to your third person character, make sure the plane's selected, and instead of the material being M Dust Cloud, now change to M Dust Cloud Instance. Nothing will change here, but it just means we can have a go at changing some parameters. So let's go back to our material and let's create a parameter for opacity as well. Let's create, if you do S and on the keyboard and press the left mouse button, you can create a scalar parameter. We'll call it opacity. And what we'll do is we will do a multiply out of here and multiply the output of the noise by the opacity so that we can play around with how much of the noise you see. And let's make that opacity a default value of 0.5, so it'll be a little bit more see-through. And now do a save, and again wait for a few seconds for that to be saved and applied. Okay, so we'll bring up the dust cloud instance, and if you just drag it out of the main window, we'll put it on the side here so that we can play around with the parameters while still seeing the viewport window. So go into play mode, and if I do Alt and Tab, I can come out of the play window and I can play around with here. So for the opacity, for example, if I make it 1, you can see it's the sort of thick clouds that we had originally. 0.5 is a much more subtle effect, and you could even go more subtle than that if you want. You could do 0.2 and have just a slight cloud around you, but you see that it still follows you around on the screen. So we've got one cloud here, but to really increase that 3D effect, what would be useful is we had 2 cloud noises that maybe went at slightly different speeds. So again, that would create the illusion, I think, of 3D clouds rather than the 2D plane. So with that in mind, let's put that opacity back up to 0.5 so we can see the clouds a bit more. Let's close that down for now. Close our play window, and let's play a bit around with the material a bit more. So go to the dust cloud, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the cloud and change the parameters a bit. So I'm going to take the nodes here from the dust cloud to the custom noise, do Control D and then drag them above, and what we're going to do is we're going to add these 2 custom noises together. So drag off here and hit the plus key for add, add those two together. The output goes to the base color, and the output also goes to this multiply for the opacity. Okay, so you should end up with something that looks like this. At the moment, those two noise nodes are the same, so we want to vary the parameters of those. So let's change the names of these parameters. So this first one we'll call dust cloud 1, and then the other one, group of parameters, we'll call dust cloud 2. The noise C parameters do noise C parameters 1 and noise C parameters 2. Okay, and what we'll do is the second one here will change the speed of the let's change the speed of the panner first of all. So we'll change it to 0.03 and 0.1 to make it a little bit faster. So straight away you can see it looks like there's two layers of dust now going across each other. And then what we'll do is we'll change in the noise C parameters. Let's change the tiling a bit. So increase the tiling to 20 to make it a little bit denser. And the seed affects the shape of the noise. So this is probably something we definitely want to change. So change that to some other random number like 5. And now it's a completely different shape of noise. You could even, if you wanted, play around with the octaves to make it less distorted. Again, it's up to you. I'll actually stick it at high value, sort of 6, because I quite like those dense cloud shapes. So now we have two clouds working together within the image plane. Let's save that and see what it looks like on the scene. So save. Go back to your desert scene, bring up the dust cloud material instance. Again, we'll just drag that to the side. Go into play mode. And now you can see that there are two layers of clouds here, although they're a bit denser because we added them together, so we could probably reduce the opacity. So I'm going to Alt Tab to my instance and reduce the opacity now to 0.2. So that has layered them together quite nicely. So there's one last thing I want to do which really sells this effect. At the moment you can see that it looks like there's clouds between the camera and me. And we've already seen what happens if you move the clouds to the distance. It looks like, or behind the character, it looks like there's a plane there. Is there a way that we can make it look like there is some sort of depth to these clouds? And the answer is yes. There's a very useful node that we're just about to add that can give the illusion of depth in a 2D image. So let's finish off by adding that to our material, and then we should have a suitable effect. So let's come out of play, go into our material here. Let's just move that along a bit. And what I want to do is, the opacity here is a constant. I want to use this node called depth fade. Let's use Alt to disconnect this and just move it across a bit, and then right click and search for a node called depth fade. And you'll see that it takes two parameters, the opacity, so we'll plug that opacity in, and a fade distance. So press S on your keyboard and create a new parameter called fade distance. Leave it as a default value of 0 for now, because we'll play around with it in a second, and plug it in there. And then plug the output here into the multiply that we used for the opacity a second ago. Now, nothing will change in our preview window, but what the depth fade does is this fade distance. So anything that is within this distance from the camera will be made more opaque, and anything that is further than that fade distance will be made, sorry, the other way around. Anything closer than this distance will be made transparent, and anything further away will be made opaque. So it creates an illusion of distance within our image. Probably better if I just show you in action, and then it makes sense. So let's save that. And let's go into our desert level and go into play mode. Nothing's changed at the moment, but if I change this fade distance parameter, and let's change it to 10,000, immediately it looks like the dust cloud is behind the mannequin. So the way this is working is the depth fade node is looking at things that are close to the camera and increasing the, or sorry, reducing the opacity of the image, so it looks like it doesn't exist close to the camera and exists far away rather. And it's a really good effect. It sort of softens the edges of the dust cloud and makes it look like it's in the environment rather than just in front of the camera. So this is really added to the effect. And what we could now do is we could now play around with the speeds of our two dust clouds and maybe have them going in opposite directions to create a more twister effect. So if I Alt Tab, and let's change the second dust cloud here to minus figures, so minus 0.02, minus 0.08, and now you can see the effect is more like dust swirling in the atmosphere instead of dust going in one direction. So if that's the effect you're after, that's how you can achieve that. But I'll probably go back to having them in the same direction. So I had 0.03 and 0.1, and then maybe increase the opacity slightly as well. So there you have it, how to create the illusion of a dust cloud effect in 3D by using a 2D material on a plane. And I hope you found it useful. Stick with me for the next tutorial, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.